Welcome to City Club of Portland's Friday Forum. I'm Greg McPherson, president of City Club. For 100 years, City Club of Portland is where civic-minded people come together to make Portland and Oregon a better place for everyone to live, work, and explore. We're gathered at the Sentinel Hotel along with all of you listening on OPB or viewing on Portland Community Media or YouTube. The generous support of City Club's corporate and media partners enables us to put on the state's best civic programs week after week. Our media partner is Oregon Business Magazine, and our current Friday Forum sponsors are Mayoral, Inc., Northwest Natural, Chevron Corporation, and Echo Northwest. Our program sponsors for this Friday Forum are Airbnb and Uber. Please show our appreciation for all of them. Joining us today are 4 candidates for Portland Mayor, who I will describe briefly in alphabetical order. Jules Bailey is a Portland native who received his bachelor's degree from Lewis and Clark College and master's from Princeton. He currently serves on the Multnomah County Commission. Jules Bailey previously served 3 terms in the Oregon House of Representatives. Sean Davis was raised by a single mother in a disadvantaged home in small-town Oregon. He earned a bachelor's degree at PSU and a master's at Pacific University. He is now an adjunct faculty member at the college level. This race is Sean Davis's first foray into elective politics. Sarah Iannarone moved to Portland 2 decades ago and now lives in outer Southeast, where she owns a restaurant. She did graduate study at PSU and now works there as assistant director of a program that designs study tours for delegations visiting Portland. This race is Sarah Iannarone's first attempt at elective office. Ted Wheeler is a Portland native who received his bachelor's degree from Stanford and master's degrees from both Columbia and Harvard. He is currently the state treasurer of Oregon, a position he has held since 2010. Ted Wheeler previously served for 3 years as chair of the Multnomah County Commission. Moderating today's debate is Ben Cannon, a former teacher, Oregon State Representative, and education policy advisor to the governor. He grew up in Portland and then earned his bachelor's degree from Washington University in St. Louis. He was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University in England. Ben Cannon is now executive director of Oregon's Higher Education Coordinating Commission. Please welcome the candidates and our moderators, City Club.
Welcome to the Friday Forum primary debate with Portland mayoral candidates hosted by the City Club of Portland. It's my honor to facilitate this discussion as 2016, as you've heard, marks the City Club's 100th year of hosting thought-provoking conversations just like this. The City Club's Friday Forum committee carefully considered which of the 15 Portland mayoral candidates to include in this debate, given the tight program schedule that we have for radio broadcast. The committee considered the candidates' fundraising track record, whether they had registered a campaign committee, and their responses to a questionnaire that assessed their commitment to the race and to this debate. Based on these criteria, 4 candidates were invited: Jules Bailey, Sean Davis, Sarah Iannarone, and Ted Wheeler. And now a quick note about today's format. Today's topics and questions were developed by the club's Friday Forum committee based on suggestions from City Club members. We will not be taking audience questions. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to each question. If you don't need it, don't use all of it. We'll get to ask more of them. As moderator, I have the prerogative to ask follow-up questions, and I will be clear about how much time candidates have to respond. Candidates will have 2 minutes each to make closing remarks. We have an official timekeeper in front of the stage who will help the candidates keep their answers within the allotted time frame. For each topic, I will alternate the order of who responds first. For the closing remarks, we chose the order randomly just before the start of the program. Finally, I'd ask that our audience here at the Sentinel refrain from applause during the course of the conversation, but please join me right now in welcoming our candidates, Jules Bailey, Sean Davis, Sarah Iannarone, and Ted Wheeler. We'll begin with an introductory question and ask you to describe a particular location, a spot in Portland that holds special meaning for you. And we're going to start with Jules Bailey.
Well, thank you to the City Club, thank you to the sponsors, thank you to all of you for making time for this important civic discussion, and to all the people that are tuning in on the radio. And I think that this crowd here is indicative of the fact that this is a city that values civic discussion and that is engaged. And that plays into one of my favorite places in Portland. The other day I came home and there was this manila envelope sitting against my front door, and I opened it up and there was a note from my dad in there, and he said, "I found this and I wanted you to have it." And it was the certificate for the brick that he bought me in Pioneer Square in 1984. And it was a reminder to me that at the time, the mayor, Frank Ivancy, actually wanted to keep that a parking lot for Meyer and Frank. And it was citizens that came together and said, we want a place for civic discussion. We want a location and a heart to our city. We want a living room. And it didn't happen by fiat. It happened by everybody coming together and buying a brick. And today, it's a great civic cultural center for us all. So I'd pick that place. Thank you.
Sean Davis, a favorite spot?
You know, I'd have to say first off, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. I really appreciate the City Club of Portland, and I respect everybody else that's up here, all the other candidates. And I love the fact that this place is packed. I mean, that means that we care about who we're going to have running our city. But the place that would be most special to me is the American Legion I took over on Alberta Street. It's in Northeast on 21st and Alberta. You guys should stop by. It's amazing. I took it over. Our community, I saw there were problems in our community, and as a community, we came together and tried to tackle those problems. We created a food pantry. We have at least 4 homeless veterans that come in there every week for food. We did clothing drives. We did the coat drives. So we're really pulling together as a community there, and I love it. And it's such a great spot because it's also what Portland used to be in the 70s to the 90s, because we haven't done renovation, but it's also that sense of community where everybody knows each other, and it's a beautiful spot to be. I hope that you guys stop by.
Sarah Iannarone.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me here. A place that's near and dear to my heart is called the Arleta Triangle Project. It's at the corner of Southeast 72nd and Woodstock Boulevard in my neighborhood. And the reason that it's dear to me was it was the first time I ever had the opportunity to engage with the city government here in Portland. My neighbors and I had decided that our streets were unsafe for our kids trying to walk to our local community center. And so we called the Transportation Bureau and asked them, would you please put crosswalks here for us? And their reply was, well, we can't put crosswalks there because it's not safe. So if someone were killed, we'd be liable. Our answer to them was, okay, well, and we decided to take matters into our own hands. And so what we did was we actually reclaimed an abandoned piece of property in an intersection and turned it into a public gathering space and community plaza that improved neighborhood safety, helped increase neighborhood identity from something that had been negative to something positive, and really brought our community together in positive ways. And we're looking at our 10-year anniversary now, and so thank you, PBOT, for that opportunity, and I look forward to talking more about my relations to the City of Portland.
And Ted Wheeler, a favorite spot in Portland?
Well, thank you very much for having me here. I'm Ted Wheeler, and yes, I'd love to be the next mayor of Portland. I guess one spot that has special meaning for me is Forest Park. When I moved back to Portland in 1999, I found myself immersing myself in the beauty and the tranquility of Forest Park, but it was pretty clear there was erosion, there was some litter, there were some problems. And so I stepped up and asked the Friends of Forest Park if I could do a fundraiser to help maintain and keep Forest Park pristine. And for 10 years, the Walk for the Wildwood Trail was the largest private fundraiser for Forest Park. And I'm proud of that, but it's also an intersection of all the opportunities and the issues facing our city. Opportunities around carbon sequestration, opportunities around living in close proximity to the wilderness, conflicts in terms of bicycles, pedestrians. Clearly, the homeless crisis is in full visibility in Forest Park, and I think there's opportunities to talk about how that kind of forestation helps combat global climate change.
If you're just tuning in on OPB, you're listening to City Club of Portland's Friday Forum. I'm Ben Cannon, Executive Director of Oregon's Higher Education Coordinating Commission. I'm here with 4 candidates for Portland Mayor: Jules Bailey, Sean Davis, Sarah Iannarone, and Ted Wheeler. Let's talk now about public safety. At a press conference earlier this month, Mayor Charlie Hales said that this year, 2016, is on pace to be even more violent than 2015, which had the highest record of gang violence in recent years. What steps would you take as mayor to address this increase in violence? And we'll begin with Sean Davis.
I was a military police officer for 3 years, and I did law enforcement in a very small base in Germany. And I know that it's not an easy job. It's very difficult, especially if you're working 20 hours of overtime on top of your regular shifts. You know, you can get burnt out on any job working 60 hours a week, but law enforcement is a really difficult job. We need to hire more police officers. We have 95 police officers right now that are retirement age. They can retire. We've only been hiring 25 a year for the past 2 years. We have to make it happen. And the police officers that we hire should have different backgrounds in social sciences, psychology, gender studies, you know, whatever. I want the police officers to look more like the people that they're policing, live in the neighborhoods that they police. And if we can, our number one rule as a city government is to take care of our people and make it a safe place to live. And we're not doing that right now.
Sarah Iannarone.
Yes, the increases in gang violence are going hand in hand with the increasing instability of our neighborhoods here. Increasing gentrification is destabilizing our communities, and people are suffering because the community fabrics are eroding as people are displaced through rapid growth and transformation, and at the same time, a lack of economic opportunity. One of the things that we need to understand is that public safety belongs to all of us. And so as we invest in community policing efforts and as we invest in getting our police officers operating directly on the streets with the communities of Portland, we as a community need to come together and make sure that we're supporting the kinds of services that enable these youth to get out of the gang lifestyle. This is a community that they've built. This is an economic livelihood for them and their families. And we need to make sure that they have the adequate support that they need to exit this lifestyle and enter more meaningful channels in our society. So we need to approach it as much as public safety as a matter of community development.
Ted Wheeler.
If you want youth to leave gangs, then give them a better opportunity. The next mayor should continue to support community engagement programs that help keep kids in school, provide them with mentorship, and show them a better way towards their own economic future. With regard to the police bureau, they're making a case they need more staffing, and there's compelling evidence they do, but the public also has expectations and wants accountability. I would suggest there's an opportunity in the middle to meet and create a 21st century police bureau. We need more community policing. That'll build community trust and reduce crime. We need to hold the Bureau accountable to the Department of Justice recommendations. We need to bargain hard to get back the 48-hour rule and also increase the leverage of elected officials to keep bad cops out. And we need to strengthen the Independent Police Review Commission to make sure that they have the ability to subpoena and also take sworn testimony. In part, it's about trust. In part, it's about building the police bureau. In part, it's about youth engagement and giving young people a reason to stay in school and on track.
And Jules Bailey, how would you address the increase in violence?
Addressing gang violence is about three things. It's about prevention, intervention, and then enforcement. And so as we look at prevention, part of gang violence is a symptom of disconnected youth, and we're seeing the results of the fact that we have been failing too many communities, including communities of color, for far too long in this city. And programs like the Community Healing Initiative that Latino Network and others have been running have been shown to be very effective. We also need to ensure that we have enough police officers to be able to go back to the community policing models that have been shown to work in Portland. We showed that in the 90s, but we now have an officer to population ratio less than half of most cities our size. The other day I was at one of my favorite haunts, Renner's Cafe in Multnomah Village, and I met the server there, and she was telling me that she was leaving to go become a police officer. That's exactly the kind of person that we want in the police force, but too often they're attracted by better wages in other places. We need more incentives and better wages for hiring police officers.
Candidates, the Portland Police Association contract is up for negotiation next year. As you know, one controversial element in it is the so-called 48-hour rule, which gives police officers who use deadly force 48 hours before they have to answer any questions. As mayor, would you push to continue or abolish the 48-hour rule, and why? Sarah Iannarone.
Yes, thank you for that question. It's an important one. Since day one of this campaign, I've been running on a platform of police reform primarily. That's why I'm running for mayor of Portland, is to be the police commissioner. We need to understand that our policing is in very many ways racist, and we need to actively work to undermine and dismantle racism in our policing and in our community. I am 100% against the 48-hour rule. I would work hard in those July contract negotiations to bargain that out of existence, and we need to do everything in our power to get rid of it.
Thank you. Ted Wheeler.
Absolutely, I would bargain to get rid of the 48-hour rule. I'd also make sure that our elected officials, the people who are elected to represent all of us, the city council and the mayor, have the authority to get rid of bad cops who do not comply with policy. I'd also make sure that we go back to the community policing model, having people in the community working with neighborhood leaders, business people, people who live in the community, will rebuild the public trust, and it's shown to reduce crime. I also want to make sure that we give the independent police review process more teeth. Right now, they do not have the ability to subpoena people, to take sworn testimony, to make recommendations when somebody's been proven to be in violation of policy. I think it's really important to do these things. Some will require charter review, some will require bargaining, some will require budget, but we've got to get on it. And there is an opportunity here for the Bureau, too. They want to be a world-class Bureau, and there's an opportunity to recruit a lot of new young people from the community. But until we have that world-class community-based model, nobody's going to want to work there.
Jules Bailey, your position on the 48-hour rule and why?
Well, thank you. I've consistently said I believe that I will be a mayor who will hold police officers accountable when they violate the public trust. And I will be a police commissioner that will bargain hard. And we need to end the 48-hour rule. And we need to do it in a way that ensures that we're also addressing the many other changes that we need in order to hold officers accountable. For example, we have 108 items that we need to address within the Department of Justice settlement. We have to ensure that we are holding those that have signed on the bottom line that they will do that to their pledge, including the police association. We also need independent investigations. We need better deployment of body cameras so we have more information. We need to ensure that we have the right and the ability for people to film police officers, which the legislature gave us, and we need to be able to implement that. Ultimately, police officers are stewards of the public trust. And I will be a police commissioner and a mayor who will ensure that as we bargain, we will implement those reforms.
Sean Davis, your position on the 48-hour rule.
I have a lot of friends that are on the force. Well, not a lot. I have a couple, and they talk about how one in particular, named John, he wears his own body camera because it's been installed. We said we're going to have body cameras for the police force. It's just been installed in red tape, you know. Ever since 2012, 2013, when we had the federal investigation on our police force, the trust between the communities and the police have been damaged, and we have to rebuild that. I say completely abolish the 48-hour law, get the body cameras. You know, we also have to hire more police officers. I know I said that last time, but right now we have people that work in personnel and work in forensics are having to take turns out patrolling because we just don't have enough people out there. Our solution is to let people retire, then hire them back. I mean, that's what some say, you know, and I think that we have a great opportunity, like what Ted says, really to build an amazing police force that can be a model. And we have to work on that because right now, our neighborhood response teams are gone. On the East Precinct, they don't have one anymore because they had one officer that was injured. And these are the teams that actually go to the neighborhoods and work with the communities. And it's not there right now. And we have to make sure that each precinct has that. So I'll talk more about it later.
Thank you. We're going to turn now to one of the city's most vexing challenges. Last October, Portland City Council declared a housing state of emergency. And just this month, City Club members adopted a report on housing affordability that includes some bold recommendations. Among them, in fact, the #1 recommendation of the City Club's report is for the city to dedicate funding to build more affordable housing. Efforts along those lines are underway right now. The state has recently passed a law allowing local use of a construction excise tax, and the Welcome Home Coalition is currently working to bring a bond measure to the ballot in the fall. As mayor, how would you work to create new funding for affordable housing? Ted Wheeler.
First of all, let's start with the premise that too many people in our community are being priced out and moved out, and the City Club report makes that perfectly clear. There's three basic strategies that we need to apply. The first is to increase the supply of housing. Not all of it requires new funding. When I talk to people who actually provide workforce and lower income housing, the first thing they mention to me is the design review process, the permitting process, the fees that are charged that stand in the way of getting housing online quickly. I will work with Commissioner Saltzman and Commissioner Fritz, who've already started the reform, to reduce the costs and the time that it takes to get that housing online. The second area is let's prevent people from going out of their homes by giving more protections to those who are at risk of being priced out and moved out. I proposed a tenant bill of rights that suggests a just cause eviction process like the City of Seattle. Finally, the Welcome Home Coalition is looking at a bond measure that could potentially be a permanent source of funding. I would support that depending upon the details, and it's probably our best opportunity going forward.
Thank you. Jules Bailey, new funding for affordable housing, how would you get there?
Absolutely, and I have been working very closely with the Welcome Home Coalition on a dedicated source of funding for affordable housing. But we also need to ensure that we are helping people right now. In fact, just last weekend I was knocking on doors and I came across a couple living in Southeast Portland who are in danger of being evicted from their house, and they are concerned because there's no rental housing out there. Not only are they going to lose their home, but there's nowhere else for them to go that they can afford. We need more protections, and while it's tempting as a politician sometimes to put forward your own plan so you can stamp it and brand it, I've actually said I'm going to endorse the City Club report. I think the work that the City Club did was excellent work, and I'm in support of it. But beyond that, we also need to bring back the kind of supply that has always been the backbone of our neighborhoods, things like duplexes, triplexes, garden home apartments, so that we can have the kind of workforce housing that's less attractive to the real estate speculators that are driving up prices in our market.
Sean Davis, how would you work to create new funding for affordable housing?
Right now, the city has 8 different incentives for people when people build houses. Eco roofs are really important in biking, but if we can actually narrow that down to just more incentives for affordable housing, that might work. I have a plan that I call the out-of-state tuition plan. So we take developers from out of state that are buying up houses, and we levy more of a fee on what they buy and when they develop. And we take that and we put it into the Bureau of Developmental Services, and we start hiring back those people who actually were laid off in 2008, 2009 because of our financial crisis. Those people will start fast-tracking builders who want to build more complete neighborhoods on the outside of Portland. So we get more fee that way. And also, all of our urban renewal areas are pretty much closing down at this point. If we have another one, we're definitely going to use the TIF funds to put as an incentive to get more people in there and building affordable housing.
Sarah Iannarone, is this a priority for you, and what steps would you take?
Of course, this is a priority for everyone running for mayor right now, and what we need to be clear about is what problem are we solving for. We don't have a clear understanding of how much we need of stock at every level of the income spectrum right now. I support a general obligation bond to fund public housing. I'm talking about that lowest level of income where we actually need to make sure that Portlanders have homes, and we need to focus on that. We also need to figure out ways to provide subsidies for more affordable housing and ensure that we have a good supply in the missing middle. I support things like carbon impact fees, scaled impact fees that will help us retain existing homes, because we already know that the greenest buildings are the one that's already built. So how can we preserve and maintain as many existing homes as possible and capture value when new homes are put up that are larger and out of scale with neighborhoods? I also am in favor of making sure that when we're doing density, that we're making the most of our inclusionary zoning that's now allowed, and that we're capitalizing on what we're building in the luxury market and capturing that value for our communities, especially as outside speculation, foreign investment occurs increasingly here.
We're going to follow up on the topic of more housing supply, but first, if you're just tuning in on OPB, you're listening to City Club of Portland's Friday Forum. I'm Ben Cannon, Executive Director of Oregon's Higher Education Coordinating Commission. I'm here with 4 candidates for Portland Mayor: Jules Bailey, Sean Davis, Sarah Iannarone, and Ted Wheeler. We're discussing the candidates' plans to address housing affordability in Portland on the heels of a new report from the City Club on the topic. In addition to dedicated funding, the City Club report also recommends policies that encourage the development of more housing types in Portland. Jules Bailey, you spoke to this previously. Where should Portlanders expect to see more duplexes, triplexes, small apartment buildings, and courtyard projects? Should those be developed in single-family residence neighborhoods?
We do need more supply, and the kind of supply that's affordable for working families. And I actually have a copy of the 1923 comprehensive plan for the city of Portland, and it shows the inner part of Portland and southeast and northeast zone for much of this kind of multifamily dwellings. And when you go through a walk through the neighborhood that I grew up in at 32nd and Hawthorne, or you walk through the Alphabet District, you find a lot of these kinds of buildings that have been built in there. They're already part of the fabric of our neighborhood, but we banned building them in single-family zoning a long time ago. We need to bring that back, and I will be a mayor that will implement the comp plan in a way to bring back that kind of housing. We also need to ensure that it's cost-effective to build that kind of housing. And right now, we have long waiting times for permits. We have a lot of fees that are put on. I've proposed a fast-track process that has said, hey, if you're building Cadillac housing, fine, we got all the normal waiting periods for you. But you want to build housing that is affordable for working families, we're going to get you to the front of the line. We're going to make sure you have the ability to do that and waive fees.
Sean Davis, where do you stand on increasing density in neighborhoods that have been historically zoned for single-family residences?
I'm all for it, but what I want to talk about are complete neighborhoods. I think that if you do look at the comp plan, the one that we have this time, it'll be finalized in June. Portland right now is only half complete, according to the city. The complete neighborhoods, the people that actually live in the incomplete neighborhoods are outside of the city core. And if you look at the comp plan, they're going to put 50% of their focus in developing into the urban core, when we should actually spend that 50% outside of Portland and start making those incomplete neighborhoods complete. A complete neighborhood has to have 5 or 7 criteria. It's a bus stop, a sidewalk, a bike lane, elementary school, a park, a healthy food store, and a business cluster. If you have 5 of those 7, you're complete. Half of Portland doesn't live in the complete neighborhood right now. So if we can actually start completing those neighborhoods and create density in those neighborhoods and spread that desirability out as well, people that move here can start moving in. They'll actually want to move east of 82nd, North Portland, and make those really nice places, and that will help also with the rent hikes.
Sarah Iannarone?
This is a topic near and dear to my heart, as I've just spent many months working on the comprehensive plan update with stakeholders sitting on the Mixed Use and Town Centers Advisory Committee. My emphasis is on focusing density in transit corridors and town centers. That's going to allow us to provide efficient, affordable transit to as many Portlanders as possible. We really need to concentrate density in those areas, and we need to make sure that we're doing it sensitively to the existing single-family neighborhoods. That said, I support the work that they're doing on the infill committee that's helping us find creative ways of getting as many residences, as many units as possible into existing R5 single-family zones. Do we upzone some of those? Yes, but I think there are things we can do with accessory dwelling units, making sure that those are fairly taxed and assessed. We can do things with cutting up larger, older homes into smaller units so it's feasible to maintain those without having to tear them down and build new. What can we do with tiny homes on these lots, and how can we fit as many people as unoffensively behind the gate, if you will, as possible?
And Ted Wheeler, if you were elected mayor, where should Portlanders expect to see increased density?
Let me start big and work my way down. First of all, a recent Metro poll showed something like 86% of Portlanders support the urban growth boundary because it protects farmlands and forest lands. But a slightly larger percentage also said they didn't want increased density in their neighborhoods. How do we resolve this conflict? First of all, let's build density where it's appropriate, and the comp plan does this. In the core, in the brownfields, Lloyd District, South Waterfront, Conway, potentially the new post office site. Let's build big, let's build dense, let's make sure there's incentives for workforce and lower income housing. Transit corridors, town centers. In the neighborhoods, we're also going to have increased density. I do support those flexible options that decrease the price of housing. I also want to support the auxiliary dwelling unit issue. And for larger houses that are at risk of being demolished, let's be flexible there. People aren't going to buy a mansion, but maybe the mansion could be preserved externally, key features internally, and change it into a duplex or a quad. That'll also protect the integrity of the architecture and create flexible housing options.
Thank you. Housing affordability directly impacts homelessness, another controversial issue in Portland. Just this week, the Portland Business Alliance and several other groups filed a lawsuit challenging Mayor Charlie Hales' policy to permit limited camping on certain public locations. If elected mayor, what would your top priority be to address homelessness in Portland? Sean Davis.
I want to make sure that we're using all the resources that we have right now. The number one job for the Portland Bureau of Housing is to end homelessness. If you look on their webpage, and then if you look at their literature, and we're just not giving them enough money to do that. I mean, last year, out of all of our budget, we gave the Portland Bureau of Housing 2.6% of that budget. This year it's going to be 3.6%, but I think it's $160 million. You're not going to be able to do. You have to end homelessness, secure rentals, and encourage home ownership. We need to give the resources to the people who are dealing with the problem. I would also explore looking at land that's not used by city or county and see if we can't have a peer created community for people that are out of houseless. You know, we've visited Wapato before. There's other places around Portland that it's not being used. Let's use it. It only work if we actually have the peers create it and run it, you know, and give them resources as well. But that's something that we can look into.
Sarah Iannarone.
Yeah, I was sad yesterday, and not just because Prince died. I don't like this lawsuit. It's not how we do things here in Portland. The people who are living out of doors right now are our most vulnerable people. The reason that they're in tents is because if they didn't have a tent, they'd be on cardboard box on a sidewalk uncovered in the elements. This is not an option for people that they're choosing of their own volition. These are economic refugees in our city who are trying to survive. And we need to have compassion for them foremost and treat them with compassion foremost. That said, as the mayor of Portland, my priority would be getting them into housing as quickly as possible. The solution to houselessness is housing, and we need to have all hands on deck for this. We need community-based solutions. We need church basements. We need tiny homes on surplus land. We need a general obligation bond to support affordable housing. We need wraparound services like those provided by Central City Concern. We need to make sure that our nonprofits are supported. But foremost, compassion, please, Portland, I beg you.
Ted Wheeler, where do you stand on the lawsuit and homelessness policy generally?
I'll get to that, but first I want to state a value. We have a humanitarian crisis unfolding on our streets, and it is terrible for those who live on the streets. But let's be honest, it's also creating a livability, public health, public safety, and economic crisis. And I want to be clear, I do not think the current policy around tent camps is working. It's unfair to people living on the streets, it's unfair to neighborhoods, and it's unfair to local business owners and operators. The lawsuit, I think, results from the fact that City Hall is not working with the community in a collaborative way. If you want to find a source of funding, let's work with the private sector, let's work with the faith sector. Let's work with neighborhood organizations and community organizations to find an effort where we can collaborate, not sue each other and disagree. It's worked in San Antonio where they've repurposed facilities. It's worked in other places like British Columbia where they use modular housing models. It's worked in places like Albuquerque where they have a robust jobs plan. They don't cost a lot, but they require the community to work together and collaborate. And it's the mayor's responsibility to make that happen.
Jules Bailey.
We have a crisis on our streets, and I'm not waiting until I'm mayor to act on it. I'm working on it right now. I serve on the joint city-county Home for Everyone committee, and we made a commitment. We said we have to put clear wins on the table to show that we can address homelessness in our city and in our county. And together with the federal government, we made a pledge that if you served your country, you deserve a roof over your head. And we made a commitment to end veterans' homelessness by the end of 2015. It was not easy. I literally spent time in soup kitchen lines. I was on the phone with landlords talking to them, but we did it. And we're in the process right now of being certified by the federal government as having officially ended veterans' homelessness in Multnomah County. But we have a long way to go. And tent camping is a symptom of a larger disease. It's a symptom of the fact that we don't have enough temporary shelter linked to mental health and addiction services with a pipeline into low-income housing. That's what we know works to solve homelessness, and I will be a mayor with the will and commitment to implement that plan.
And Jules Bailey, just to follow up, do you support the current mayor's policy to permit limited camping on public lands, certain public locations, or not?
I don't believe that tent camping is the answer. I believe that what we need to do is like what we did just a couple of weeks ago at Multnomah County, where we voted to put some of our lawsuit settlement money that we'd won into opening new emergency shelter. And in fact, we're bringing online 650 new beds of shelter that are connected to mental health and addiction services. But shelter is a respite. It's not a solution, and that's why we need more low-income affordable housing with a pipeline into it, connected to workforce development so people have a pathway off the streets.
Thanks. We're going to shift now to a different but related topic of business and the economy. A recent report shows that Oregon's tech industry continues to grow, with over 3,800 new jobs created between 2014 and 2015. But economic growth has placed stress on housing costs and availability, and it hasn't been experienced equally. How would you build on efforts like the PDC's Inclusive Startup Fund, aimed at supporting underrepresented entrepreneurs, to ensure more equitable economic growth going forward? Sarah Iannarone.
Yes, well, thanks for giving a shout out to that Inclusive Fund. I just finished working on the update to PDC's strategic plan, and economic development and equity was a large part of that. What we were really trying to think of is how can we level the playing field for Portlanders, and seed funds like that are going to be key. I know the Elevate Capital Group is doing a good job trying to get money like that to entrepreneurs of color here in Portland, and we need to double down on efforts like that. But we also need to make sure that we're looking at an entire ecosystem of economic opportunity. What is the access to workforce training, jobs training, post-secondary education, secondary education, high school education? What are we thinking about when we're talking about things like affordable commercial space and avoiding gentrification in commercial areas? We need to make sure that small businesses are supported and that they have the startup help that they need. We also need to be making sure that we're tracking this. Who is having access to funds? Do we need to be looking carefully at our minority contracting processes to make sure that emerging businesses aren't supplanting minority and women-owned businesses for government contracts? We need to take a multi-angled approach to this.
Ted Wheeler.
One of the accomplishments I'm most proud of as your state treasurer was passing the Oregon Investment Act, which created a pathway to both capital and services going to smaller businesses in our innovation and technology economy. And the board itself is diverse. If you want communities of color and lower income people to be able to benefit from these programs, they should be at the table where the decisions are being made. I'm very supportive of all of these efforts around job training and connecting people to higher wages. I put forward a plan called 25 by 25 that recognizes that there's a lot of people in our community who could be qualified for jobs that pay $30, $40, and $50 an hour, jobs that are going a-begging in our community, in manufacturing, in healthcare, around retail distribution, in the building trades. If I'm elected mayor, I'm going to implement the 25-25 plan and build pathways to education and job training so that more people in our community can be connected with the job skills that employers are increasingly say they want in a skills-based economy.
Jules Bailey, how can the city promote more equitable economic development?
It is incredibly important that in Portland that we have pathways for equitable economic development, but it's not just a priority for me as mayor. It's something I'm working on right now, and I'm glad you mentioned the Inclusive Innovation Fund. I voted at Multnomah County to seed that innovation fund with $500,000. The city also came in and seeded it, as well as the state of Oregon, and we've seen the success that that's had. You can file it under the heading of necessary but not sufficient. We need to do more. And that's why I want to give a shout out to someone who's in the audience today, Ryan Buchanan with EROY, and also Walter Robinson on my staff, who are working on the Emerging Leaders Internship Program that gets a pipeline for kids and young adults of color into paid internships in some of the best businesses in the community to build resumes and build experience. But we also need to ensure that we have bureau directors, managers, and a mayor's staff that is committed to equity, and I will be a mayor that will ensure that my staff and the people that I hire reflect the community that we are serving.
Sean Davis.
I would say the answer is invest in ourselves, invest in Portland. I was talking about the complete neighborhoods. What we need to do is promote small businesses. Right now in Chinatown, because we're trying to renovate the whole place, so what we're doing is we're cutting the first-time fees for business owners. They're called the SDCs, the Service Development Charges. We cut those in half. We do that for local businesses. So people who have lived here in Portland for 5 or more years, all of a sudden they get our home court advantage. They can start their business with cutting those fees in half. We also look towards another urban renewal. We use those funds to build up our communities. Again, we have to build up the outside communities, not just the inside core.
If you're just tuning in on OPB, you're listening to City Club of Portland's Friday Forum. I'm Ben Cannon, Executive Director of Oregon's Higher Education Coordinating Commission. I'm here with 4 candidates for Portland Mayor: Jules Bailey, Sean Davis, Sarah Iannarone, and Ted Wheeler. We've just been talking about business and the economy. Let's now turn to a topic, transportation, that really touches on all of the issues we've been discussing today. And I'd like to start by asking, as Portland continues to grow, how would you balance the interests of drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians? What modalities take priority? Jules Bailey?
We have hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million new people that are projected to move to the Portland region over the coming decades. If you think rush hour is bad now, it's going to get worse. And we have to ensure that we have a transportation system that works for all modes. And I actually think there's a lot of agreement about a shared path forward. The other day I was talking with a woman who was saying that she was frustrated with some of the congestions that she perceived that people on bicycles were causing. And what she wanted was more protected bike lanes for people on bicycles so they wouldn't be in the road. I think there's a lot of people who ride bicycles who would also like more protected bike lanes, and I think that's something we can agree on. We also need more investment in sidewalks and safe transportation, especially in East Portland. I worked with Representative Shamia Fagan to bring $10 million to the city to help build sidewalks in some of the most unsafe areas in Portland. But ultimately, we need a transportation system that works for everybody. I grew up walking to school when I was a kid. I want my son to be able to walk to school when he's old enough to go to Capitol Hill, but right now there's no safe way for him to get there. Helping him do that helps get cars off the road.
Sean Davis.
And it goes back to the complete neighborhoods. We invest in our complete neighborhoods, and we actually put businesses and people work next to where they live. They're not going to be driving as far. We do need to put the sidewalks in, and we have to work on our public transportation to make sure it's safer for people to use and less expensive. I mean, it's going to cost, but I mean, that's our priority. That's what we're supposed to be doing as the city government. You make sure that you live in a safe place and make sure that you're encouraging businesses, and that's what we have to do.
Sarah Iannarone, how far would your administration push alternative forms of transportation?
I would push as far as possible. I'm a car-free Portlander, and I'm running largely because we have forgotten what it means to be a transportation-forward city. We've been busy, we've been growing, but we've forgotten that what made Portland very appealing to the rest of the world to come here and spur this growth is the fact that we had a good transit system, we had invested in bicycle lanes, and we had compact, walkable neighborhoods connected in the urban core. We need to continue to invest, Sean is right, in compact, walkable neighborhoods around this city from edge to edge, especially in East Portland. But we need to prioritize safety. I'm a big supporter of Vision Zero. I think we should work very hard through public policy to try to minimize traffic fatalities in this city. We cannot have people dying on our streets preventably when there are things that we can do to stop people dying in automobile crashes. It is within our power. We can do that. We also need to focus on more car-free zones around the city that are commercial and pedestrian friendly, and think about ways to make sure that people of low income and limited mobility have access to affordable or free transit.
Ted Wheeler.
A well-maintained transportation system is an indicator of a city's livability, safety, and economy. And by those standards, frankly, our city is dying. PBOT said their backlog on maintenance was $750 million a couple of years ago. Now it's $1.2 billion. The answer is we need all of the above to be a 21st century city, but without funding, all we're doing is talking about plans that are going to sit on shelves. Number one, let's support Steve Novick's gas tax. Number two, the mayor should work with our regional partners on a collaborative solution to permanent sustainable funding. Number 3, let's work with our state legislators to talk about how we're going to change the formulaic approach to gas taxes, where half of the gas taxes we pay here in Portland go to Salem, the non-federal part. It should be coming back here, but we should have to compete for it based on priority, based on need, based on return on investment. And finally, the next mayor should be a really full partner with the legislature to pass a transportation bill in 2017.
Ted Wheeler mentioned a gas tax. Let's treat this as a follow-up with 30 seconds. Do you support the upcoming temporary 10-cent gas tax that will be on voters, Portlanders' ballots this May? And if not, or if so, what other measures are necessary? We'll start with Jules Bailey.
I absolutely support it, and I think it's very important that it pass. It will give us the ability to make investments in safety and in maintenance that we have not been able to make. But it is also a stopgap in a larger issue of how we fund our transportation system. I've called for other things that are sometimes viewed as controversial, but I think it's important that we have a mayor who will lead on things like pricing carbon to be able to fund our transportation system. I think that we need to invest in alternative forms of transportation and reform how we pay for public transit as well.
Sean Davis, do you support the gas tax?
I don't support the gas tax. Not only do I believe it's going to affect inversely the most vulnerable people who actually can't afford the gas. I mean, we're already paying 60 cents a gallon in taxes. I also think that the city government, quite frankly, doesn't have our trust. This is a gas tax saying that this is not going to fix the problem. It's just it's another temporary solution, or it might help. Half of the money that they're going to get for the gas tax is not going to go to the roads. Half of it's going to go to safety as well. So no.
Sarah Iannarone, where do you stand on the May ballot proposal?
Yeah, I fundamentally disagree with you there, Sean. Safety is roads, so we need maintenance and safety both. They go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And right now, we need that gas tax, and I would actually say it needs to be bigger because we're charging less than other cities and states around the country. We need to invest in our roads if we value them. That's plain and simple. But there are other things that we can do. We can have a user pays system. We need to think increasingly about who's having the greatest impact on our roads and how are they contributing to their maintenance and safety upgrades. We also need to think carefully about things like the fact that the Selwood Bridge, 70% of the, oh, I missed that one. We'll go back later.
Ted Wheeler, your final thoughts on the May ballot proposal?
Yes, I will support it, and I hope you will too. Think about this, even at 10 cents a gallon, if you pay it, you're still paying more than $1 less per gallon than you were a couple of years ago, and we're starting on the path to a solution. I want to point out Seattle too. They just went to their taxpayers with a half-a-cent gas tax increase. They're leveraging that to $1.6 billion in investments in local transportation infrastructure, including transit, separated bike lanes, safety, and improved auto transit. I would argue that we need an alternative strategy, and I'll work with our regional partners to find one, whatever it may be.
Thank you, candidates. That's it for questions. You now each have 2 minutes to deliver closing remarks, and we'll go in the order that we determined at the outset, beginning with Sarah Iannarone.
Well, again, thank you all for your civic engagement and for City Club's continued dedication to making Portland a better place. Really, as we move forward, that's going to be the basis of how we do this is together. Portland is a place that works when the people come together and make Portland work. I'm going to give you a little bit of a different pitch right now than you'll probably be hearing from my opponents today and on the campaign trail, which is stop and think for a minute not about the problems that we're facing today, the homelessness, the spiraling housing costs, the fact that people are tipping into homelessness because of a lack of renter protections, the fact that our streets are snarled and deadly, or that wages can't seem to keep up with the cost of living here, and that there are new Portlanders coming every day that we don't know, we don't recognize them. Our community is changing quickly. Think beyond that. Think 4 years from now. Think 8 years from now. What city do you see? What do you want? What does Portland look like on the other side of this? When was the last time you heard people talking about that? It's been a while since we had a real vision of what we're going to be again. What are we going to be best at? It's been 40 years since we came up with regional government and land use planning integrated so we could get transit in our urban growth boundary. What are we going to double down on? What are we going to be best at? I think the answer to that question should be equity. I think that we should aspire to be one of the most livable cities in the world, if not the most livable, based on the fact that we have managed to get our arms around everyone in this city and make this a livable place for every Portlander. That if we focus on equity, we'll know that we've created a place that is truly sustainable and truly resilient. I bring a unique skill set to this race. My background is in urban planning. I'm a community activist and a small business owner. You can trust that I will bring the values that are dear to Portlanders into this transition, into the next phase. Please take a look at my website. It's sarahforportland.com. I look forward to your vote in May. Thank you very much.
Jules Bailey, your close.
I want to thank City Club of Portland and all of you and to my fellow candidates for this important debate about the future of our city, because this city is at a turning point. I grew up in a working class family in Portland. I'm an economist by training. I've served in the legislature and at the Multnomah County Commission. But most importantly, I love this city, and I know that all of you do too. This is a city that's historically been a big, small town. And we're becoming a major global city, and that brings all kinds of opportunity with it, but it also brings challenges. I want to raise my son in a city where owning your own home isn't a fading memory from a previous generation, and where making rent isn't a monthly struggle. I want to raise my son in a city where you can walk safely down the streets and where we have police that we know, where we have small businesses that are thriving, a great education system, and where we are finally having a city where the color of your skin isn't a determinant on how you're able to thrive in this city. I want to be a mayor for all of Portlanders, and that's why I have capped my campaign contributions in this race. I'm going to set a table, and I don't want anybody else taking more than one chair at that table so that we have a shared vision of how we move forward together. And the fact is that's the way that we've always solved our challenges in Portland, is by working together to get things done, and to not just create a vision for our future, but to have the leadership to implement that vision. Last fall, I was singing a song to my son that I sing to him before I put him down for bed every night, called Weather the Storm, from a play at Portland Center Stage. You should all go support your local arts community. And the song is about stepping up and being brave and about serving your community. And I looked at him and I thought, how do I sing this to you every night? And yet in 15 years, 20 years, tell you to step up and do something for your community if I didn't do it when I thought my community needed it. I'd be honored to work with all of you. I've been supported by Portland Association teachers, Oregon League of Conservation voters, and others, and I'd be honored to have your support as well. Thank you.
Ted Wheeler, your closing remarks.
Thank you very much for having me. First of all, let's agree that Portland is an amazing city. It's a jewel. It's in my DNA. I was born and raised here. I'm very proud that I graduated from the Portland Public Schools. My wife, Katrina, and I have chosen to raise our young daughter here, and I assume, like everybody in this room, we feel like we have an investment in the future of this community. There's a lot of issues and opportunities that the next mayor is going to have to address. The threat of global climate change, the opportunity to leverage the breadth and increasing diversity of our community, the issues we talked about today. There's a lot at stake here, folks. The city's livability, its economic future, and even lives. This is not an easy job. There isn't time for on-the-job training. You know that I have the ability to lead in this context. You sent me to Multnomah County as your chair. When I got there were leadership issues. There was a massive budget deficit. By the time I left, we'd worked with my colleagues to create a very congenial Board of County Commissioners. We put in a world-class leadership team. We negotiated long-term contracts. We solved the budget problems. We did a lot of great innovative leadership. You then sent me down to Salem twice to be your treasurer, and I brought my innovative and my reform-minded approach to that office. We put our investment portfolio in the #1 position. We increased the state's credit rating. We paid down our debt. We passed landmark legislation around economic development and retirement security strategies. You know that I have the ability to lead because I've done it before. I'm proud to have the endorsements of the last 3 mayors, Mayors Sam Adams, Tom Potter, and Vera Katz. I'm proud to have the endorsements of 7 current and former Multnomah County commissioners. I'm proud to have the support of labor organizations, business organizations, hundreds of other people in this community, and I hope you will join them in supporting me, Ted Wheeler, to be your next mayor. Thank you for having me.
Sean Davis, your closing statement.
I wanted to tell you guys a little bit more about me in the little short time that I have. So I grew up in the Cascade Mountains in a small logging town, and my father was a logger, my uncle was a logger, and we couldn't log anymore. You know, the spotted owl happened, and I grew up in trailer parks, very poor. To get out of that poverty, I joined the military, and I spent 13 years in the military. You know, I had 3 deployments in that time. When I came back here to Portland to raise my family, I'm looking out my door and I see the problems and I see the politicians not fixing them. This is how the City Club of Portland started. They saw a need and then they began 100 years ago. There's like, we're going to take care of these issues if no one else is doing it. That's what I'm doing. I didn't say, hey, I'm going to run for mayor and then start doing this stuff. In the military, we have a phrase called, you train like you fight. I've been doing this stuff, you know, with the community center that I have in Northeast Portland. And when the people that I've been helping asked me to run for mayor, and at first I'm like, well, no, that's silly. I mean, only politicians do that stuff. But then I thought about it. It's not at all. This is what our system was made to do. Accurate representation. If we get somebody in City Hall that has the same perspective and shares the same problems with the people that are going through them, those problems will go away, I promise you. So I'm running. Please, find out more information about me. My website is SeanDavisForPDX.com. I have an event at the Jack London Bar on April 23rd, tomorrow night. And then May 9th at the Kennedy School, I'm going to be talking about what we can do to create a community, peer-run community for homeless people at Wapato. I have Israel Bear coming to speak. He's the head of Street Roots, and a couple other people, and I hope to see you guys there. Thank you so much.
We're out of broadcast time, and we'll have to stop for the day. If this program has inspired you to join City Club, place your business card in one of the membership envelopes in the table and hand it to the club staff as you leave the room. This is Greg McPherson, President of City Club. Please join me in thanking the candidates and our moderator, as well as Tony Tabora Roberts of the Friday Forum Committee who produced today's program. We're adjourned.